We're continuing with quadratic functions and completing the squares. One thing that doesn't come up very often and is just has value for you guys to understand, but you don't have to memorize them. Memorize this one is the derivation of the quadratic formula. So it's interesting to see it one time. And so how do I drive the quadratic formula? The quadratic formula that you've seen many times and you use often comes from this completing the square process. So let's start again with y equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. I know that when I'm trying to write the quadratic formula, the plan is to actually find the zeros of this function. So quadratic formula finds zeros of this function. And now, instead of finding zeros directly from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the square and then find the zeros. So completing the square means I'm replacing that with a times x minus h to power 2 plus k equal to 0. Where h is this formula and k is this formula. But I'm not plugging in yet. I'm going to solve for x, then plug them back in. So the next one, solving for x. So how do I solve for x? First thing is trying to isolate x. So I'm subtracting k. Then divide by what multiplies the term. Then square root both sides, and remember to keep plus and minus. Now add h to the other side. That solves for. Okay, this does not look like quadratic formula yet. What we need to do is to plug in these two values for h and k and then simplify. So the next step, x is equal to negative b over 2a plus minus c minus b squared divided by 4a divided by negative c divided by a. Now, still, it sort of feels like quadratic formula, but it's not right there. So what do we need to do? First thing, we need to make a common denominator for the top part of the under the square root. Excuse me. Common, and I'm actually distributing the negative sign in. So basically, it's under the square root would be the top part of it would be negative c plus b squared divided by 4a. Common denominator makes it negative 4c plus b squared divided by 4a. Don't forget that denominator. Okay, so it looks a little bit more like the quadratic formula that we remember. Here's the thing, quadratic formula has a numerator and a denominator. This one looks like two fractions added together, one with a radical. So what we do is, let's simplify underneath again. It's this fraction over a, therefore I'm going to do the numerator times 1 over the denominator, and I get negative b over 2a plus minus. And I'm switching these two, b squared minus 4ac. Sorry, this was, when we did the common denominator, this was 4ac. 4ac divided by 4a squared. So the next step is, I see a complete square in the bottom under the square root. I'll take that one out. Negative b over 2a plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. And this becomes 2a. Common denominator, b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And that's your quadratic formula. So quadratic formula is a byproduct of completing the square.